Welcome back to the B-Main, and we're here for episode number 3. I'm with my co-host, as always, Gavin Grubbs, and we've got Timothy Watson back, who is going to be making regular appearances here at the B-Main, and you'll check me looking down at all my things on my screen. Timothy doesn't have his webcam yet, so we didn't record the first episode on YouTube because Gavin didn't have a webcam, and so we'll still put this one on YouTube, but Timothy will be getting a webcam here soon, but he'll be with us all night long because we've got a lot of stuff to go through, Gavin. We've got World Series of Asphalt, 9 different nights, and don't worry, we won't bore you. We'll get to the juicy stuff for sure. We've got a lot of stuff in the dirt world with Ocala, with Lucas Oil, then Volusia, and we also had the USAC. They were at Volusia and Ocala, so we got a lot of stuff. And then, of course, who can forget the Daytona 500, Gavin?
I mean, this last 2 weeks has been insane as far as the content of the racing that we have watched. It's got to be the busiest 2 weeks of the year. I think hands down. I can't imagine another time at all this year that's going to be even close to what the last 2 weeks have been.
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot, and let's go ahead and start it off. And I want to direct here to Timothy because a lot of y'all, from the first episode, and if you didn't quite get to listen in, Timothy he's a super late model driver and very, very talented. He's raced with a lot of these drivers before, so he's got real insight, especially in the asphalt world, of a lot of the grassroots stuff that we're talking about. And let's start it off with night number 1. William Sawalich goes to the lead, middle of the race, and then he gets DQ'd. And, Timothy, you've talked a lot about William Sawalich, and I think you were talking to me about a time when you knew he was good, and it was at Auburndale in one of the Winter Nationals.
Yeah, he was able to roll the top on me in a legend car at Auburndale, and that's not easy to do by any means, but getting into the deal with him and Butcher, that kind of stuff happens, especially at New Smyrna. You get under somebody a little too hot, you just get loose. I think that was completely a racing incident. There was, he definitely didn't mean to do that.
Yeah, and I think that's one of those things, like, we saw it a lot over the 9 nights of racing. I mean, we saw it with Ty Majeski, and I believe it was Colby Howard, right? They made huge contact. Ty Majeski went into the wall, was a little bit hot over his radio. After calming down, he had said Howard probably should have been more patient if he knew he was faster. And so Ty Majeski had said that he missed his stagger by almost 5/8, and that's a lot. 5/8 is a lot.
That is a lot of stagger. Especially if it shrunk that much, then you're just going to be tight. I
don't understand how does the tire shrink? Obviously we build air pressure as the run goes on because you build heat in the tires. How did it shrink? Was it after the tires cooled?
No, most of the time when your stagger shrinks, it's just your left rear growing faster than the right rear. So your right rear is still growing, just the left rear is growing a lot more than the right rear. Okay. And it's kind of the opposite. When you gain a bunch of stagger, the right rear is gaining more than the left rear is.
Okay. Yeah, Timothy knows everything in and out about these super late models, and I've told him the day when I finally get mine, you're going to have to help me because you're going to have to teach me a lot. But yeah, we had a lot of contact like that, and obviously Sawalich got DQ'd that night, and Connor Jones in the pro late model race got DQ'd for the first time that night, but Gavin, as we know, Connor Jones would later on go to be disqualified on, I believe it was night number 6. So 2 DQs. And I would say he was very, very unlucky at New Smyrna because he had a very strong car in the pro late models and the super late models. But I think he ran into a lot of, unluckiness. But I wouldn't quite say it was unluckiness on the side of the disqualifications.
Yeah, no, I mean, this week I noticed the trend of the World Series of Asphalt was, I believe there were 4 disqualifications for wins, and then go look at the Truck Series, and you see Parker Kligerman got disqualified. So in just 14 days
that one
of
hurt
racing,
my heart. That one hurt my heart.
We had 5 DQs in 14 nights of racing. I don't remember ever seeing anything like this. And as we're going to go talk more about the World Series of Asphalt, it was a super exciting week, but it was kind of just a weird vibe, different kind of week as far as the racing goes.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, they just saw that on my end. What is it? I've got a wallpaper up as our background right now, and sometimes when my computer graphics card gets overloaded a little bit, it'll show the old wallpaper. So if you saw that for a moment, that's what that was. But yeah, we saw a lot of disqualifications, especially here at the World Series of Asphalt, and we haven't seen a lot about that again. But this is something I'll ask you about, Timothy. We obviously saw Connor Jones. He got disqualified for the first time. It was carburetor issues. And then the second time, let's see, it was for weight. And I think he was over left side weight, right?
Yeah, he had too much left side weight.
So explain that to me.
So, I mean, and that, like Connor Jones was saying in his interview after, I mean, that could have a lot to do with the scales at New Smyrna because they are kind of janky. I mean, they sometimes sit on level, and it's. And I wasn't there. I didn't see it.
Yeah.
So I can't fully speak on that. But the reason, you're starting to see so many disqualifications like this is because the field's getting so tight, especially in the Pro Late models. I mean, the field's right on top of each other. So teams are trying to squeeze every bit that they can out. And, sometimes you end up a little further than you needed to go. So, yeah, it's gonna get to the point to where disqualifications are very normal just because of how close the field's getting.
And so let's think about that as race fans, and obviously you, Timothy, as a driver, but also a fan. But what does the future look like for that? Does that need to be fixed? How does that get fixed, or is that something that's going to just naturally occur and there's nothing that we can do about it?
I mean, it'll just level itself out eventually.
How so?
People are gonna get tired of getting DQ'd all the time, so they're gonna, give themselves a little bit more room to the limit, and then that's gonna slow the field down a little bit, and that's just gonna be the way it goes. It's worked like this for years. Every 5 or so years, you'll see, a whole bunch of people get disqualified, and then the field gets a little more spread out for the next couple years, and then it starts getting closer and closer, so everybody's trying to squeeze every little bit they can get. And, the
so
left
you've seen
side
this trend
weight
before.
Deal, yeah, and it's with all kinds of racing. I've seen it in legend cars and go-karts. It's in every form of racing.
Okay. Well, and you mentioned, I mean, we talked about that left side weight, because obviously, what was it? I can't remember who it was, but me, Gavin, Timothy, and a few of our other buddies had a racing night earlier last week, and it's where we had a lot of conversation. I think we were talking about left side weight, and I can't remember. I made a joke about Gavin. I said, we were talking about racing, and I said, well, I don't think it'd help him if he had his 400-pound wheelchair in the car. And Timothy, you were like, well, hey, the more left side weight, the better it'll turn.
Yeah.
Gavin started dying out laughing.
Yeah, and that's with the left side weight too. It's easy to miss on left side weight, especially I believe he was running a Fury chassis, which that's what we've run is a Fury, and they're very hard to get weight on the right side. They seem to lose a lot of right side weight as a run goes on after you burn fuel. So that could have just been something they were used to running the 30 or 40 lap races. I forget how many how many laps the races were earlier in the week, and then they run the 100. Yeah, then they run the 100 lap race, and they just forgot to move weight. I mean it could have been something as simple as that.
Yeah. Well, and I guess that comes. I guess do you have to move weight over to the right side just to fix that? I mean.
Oh yeah.
Well, and Gavin, I mean, we saw a lot of calamity at some of this, and I think one of the big things was that we were looking at was Jade Avedizian, and we talked about her episode 1. And actually, it was cool because I commented on Jade Avedizian's post on what was it, night number 3, and she actually liked my story, and I was like, wait, whoa, okay. So then I commented on her post, and I was like, you should come on the B main. And then she liked that comment. And so I messaged her, and she never got back to me. So hopefully, maybe we'll have her on sometime. But we were trying. But she had a great run here for especially this was her big grand opening into asphalt short track racing, because everything she's known before this has been dirt.
Yeah, I mean, I've been watching her career the last 3 seasons, especially in dirt midgets, and she's one of those drivers that, to me, I didn't know how her skill set was going to translate into asphalt, because, she's a very short run dominant driver. I mean, really up on the wheel, not afraid to, I guess, do the dirty work in a race car. So I didn't know how that was going to translate in these longer races, but I mean, she did great. And I was really impressed in night 3, where she came from, the middle of the pack and got all the way up to second place and got her second podium of the week after, Connor Jones and I think it was Hunter Renfrew got really crossways on a restart, and Hunter Wright slid right in from 3rd to 1st, and Jade went from 5th to 2nd, I think, on that restart. I think that was night 3, and that was one of those ones where I was like, man, this kid, she's good.
No, seriously. And one of the things that she kept her race car so clean, she didn't have a body panel out of line. We both watched all of the nights, and I genuinely think in all of the 6 Pro Late Model features, I think she made contact with someone once.
Yeah, I don't remember what night that was, but I remember watching it, and I don't remember that incident really being on her. I think it was one of those, I think it was a late race restart where there was just a stack up, and she was one of the cars involved.
Well, and I mean, Timothy, you've run at New Smyrna before, and here in the World Series of Asphalt, for these Pro Late Models, it was 6 different nights. I gotta imagine, and us all knowing cars, that's got to be impressive to keep your car so clean of 6 nights of racing.
Oh yeah, it's especially there. Everybody's trying to win every single night, so nobody's giving any slack. It's very hard to do so. I've never run the entire World Series of Asphalt racing. I've only ever run the 200. But yeah, it's not an easy. It's a lot easier said than done. I mean, you see guys who are known for being clean racers and everything else, and they go down there and come home with 2 junked race cars. So it's not easy to do.
Yeah. I mean, especially when you look at the drivers that show up in a Pro Late Model on any Pro Late Model tour recently. I mean, having a clean car in that division is even more impressive, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Golly. And one of the things, another driver I was looking at was Hunter Wright. I think Timothy, you mentioned it. He's been around for quite a while, but he got 3 wins in the World Series of Asphalt. Now, 2 of them came
and only went to victory lane once.
I was going to say, well, it was because he was running behind Connor Jones. But Timothy, I think you've mentioned him before.
Yeah, I used to race legend cars with him. He's always been fast in everything he's been in, so it's not a surprise to me that he, went home with 3 wins, even though 2 of them were because he finished second and the leader was DQ'd. I mean, that's still a win. So
and sometimes I was gonna say sometimes that's how it goes. Jones, they were pushing the line and they went over the line, and so if that hadn't happened, the race might have been different. And so obviously we had we had Max Reeves. This was so impressive to me, and we'll get to some of the later. It was night number 4. He held off Alex LeBay and Hunter Wright for about 12 laps to pick up his first win in these Pro Late Models. And Max Reeves running for Joe Gibbs this season in the ARCA Menards. I think that's another driver that we can look at that he could be a possible talent.
Yeah, I mean, he's pretty much an unknown up until this year. I think he's just 15 years old, but
he's very young.
Man, after watching him just race for a week and a half, I mean, he's got a lot of the tools you look for in a driver that's going to be great. And that night 4 of him holding off LeBay and Wright in those 12 laps, and they all 3 kept it clean, and he just really wasn't that much faster than them, but he was just fast enough to make them use up their equipment trying to get by him, and the last few laps of the race, he got to kind of stretch his lead back out there in the last 2 or 3 laps, and it really impressed me how composed someone that young was in that situation.
I know. I really thought, even just by the way he composed himself, he was older. And then we talked about Jade Avedisian. Who was the other driver, Gavin, that you and me talked about? His name rhymes with yours. It's actually the same as yours. Who did we talk about first episode?
Gavin Michelle got his first
Oh my
win
gosh.
at the World Series in his ASA tour as a rookie during the Clyde Hart 200. I mean,
Yeah.
what a run he had there. That was very impressive from him. He
he pitted late on that 14th.
Yeah, he got buried in the field late after running top 5 all night, and when he goes to pit road that late, you're kind of, I don't know if he's going to be able to get back through the field, but I mean, he just went straight to the front and in a race with a lot of big names. I mean, you see all the big names in super late models that we all have talked about, and go ahead and throw Christopher Bell in there too, and he just says, you know what, I don't care, I'm going to go win on the night of his 17th birthday, no less than that.
Yeah, it was definitely impressive from him, and he eventually would go on to win the overall Super Late Model World Series of Asphalt Championship for 2025. Extremely impressive from a 16 going on 17-year-old. And Timothy, we talked about Gavin Michelle before, and I want to know what you know about him.
I really don't know a whole lot about him as a person. I've raced around him a little bit. He hasn't run much super late model stuff since I've been running. I believe this is one of his first few races in a super late model, or that week was one of his first times in a super late model. But I know in the pro late models he seemed to win a lot. But he's got a good car behind him too. That Donnie Wilson camp, they sure have it figured out when it comes to these, super and pro late models. They just have the best of the best. So you as a driver have a lot more time to focus on, what you need to do rather than what the car needs to do.
Which I think is one of those things for you. You and your dad run your own team. You're the two-man crew that work on that car. So that's one of those factors that not a lot of people think about, in the family-run teams that, a lot of these guys like Gavin Michelle, they've gotten to where they are, and rightfully so. We know Gavin Michelle definitely, I think, has earned that ride for sure, but he's able to put his mindset towards driving. And he doesn't really have to think about anything else. Meanwhile, Timothy, you have to think about the car, how it drives. Your dad's your crew chief, but you're half the crew chief as well.
Yeah, it definitely makes it harder. But there's been people who have made it work. We're still trying to figure out how to get there and make it work. But there's been like Eric Jones. He won the Snowball Derby just himself and his dad.
Wow.
So it's not impossible. It's a lot harder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Gavin.
I'm gonna go back to night 4 just because we haven't mentioned it yet. Austin Beers got his
Yes, I was just about to say it.
After being our last guest on the B Main, I made a little Instagram post congratulating him, and that was kind of a big deal to me, just getting to watch him win. That was fun.
I thought it was really cool, and he was doing so well in the opener for the Wayland Modified Tour. I was really hoping that somehow he would get to pull it out, and it just didn't quite work out strategy-wise. Still had a good finish. He finished 5th, but then he got that win on night number 4 in the Tour Mod, and he's definitely the future of modified driving.
Yeah, he's I think is in a pretty similar team situation to Timothy from what he's told us about. He's in one of the smaller teams in that garage, but he goes toe-to-toe with those top 4 or 5 guys on those big teams every week, and just really puts up good numbers. I think he's a dark horse for the Wheeling Championship this year. I don't know if I would consider him quite the favorite yet, but I think he's a dark horse that has an opportunity to win a championship and win 5 races this year.
Yeah. Well, and one of the drivers that we haven't talked about yet, I'm going to mention 2 of them. We were talking about that Donnie Wilson camp for Gavin Michelle. George Phillips moves up to the super late models this year with Donnie Wilson. He did fairly well. He ran in the top 5 a lot, top 10 most of the World Series of Asphalt. He had, I think, 2 or 3 top 5 finishes, but he did very well as well. And Timothy, you were mentioning him is another one of those drivers that we need to watch.
Yeah, sure. I raced with him in Legend Cars.
I think Timothy raced with everybody in Legend Cars, guys. That's something we mentioned before.
That's
the other night, and every time me or Scott would mention Timothy goes, "Yeah, we raced together."
Yeah, I mean, in asphalt, in the asphalt world, that's kind of where it comes from.
Yep.
Somebody
get me in a Legend car.
Yeah, they're very, very hard car to drive. They chew a lot out driving race cars. So normally the guy you see up front have had experience in a Legend car at some point. But yeah, George Phillips, he's always been really fast, and he was actually my teammate for a little bit in Legend Cars. Raced in the line while I was racing in the Pro Division, and he always had great speed. He's a little more timid than like Gavin show. He thinks a lot more before he does, and sometimes it hurts him. He doesn't take a position that he could. I mean, I've had the same problem before.
Yeah.
You think a little bit too much about the outcome before you do something, and it hurts you sometimes.
How do you get over that hump?
You race car, and then you realize, oh, it didn't hurt that bad. So, and it's as bad as that sounds. That's sometimes what it takes. And another thing is money. You think about, I don't want to have to be replacing a race car, but I don't think that's an issue with George Phillips. I think that he'll get it figured out eventually. And also, he's brand new to the super late model, so
yeah.
I think Gavin will have a couple more races under his belt than George Phillips has.
Well, and I think for Phillips, like, that's one thing, like, this is really his big first outing in the super late models as well. And I think for that, he ran very well. But I think I would definitely agree with you. We saw the result out on track that he definitely was a little bit more timid. And before we move on from him, I got to say, his paint scheme was fire. I just love the combo of red and yellow and black. Like, he had the roof was red, and he had those yellow numbers. I thought it was sick.
I'm trying.
Yeah, I'm not a huge paint scheme, so I don't know.
Yeah, Timothy's car is white.
Yeah, you can make an ugly car go fast, and an ugly car at victory lane's a lot better than a fancy car sitting in the pit at the race. So.
Oh, but that was most of it, and then that was George Phillips. But we had one more driver that we hadn't got to talk about, and it was Carson Brown. He won 2 features in those super late models, but the big thing I want to talk about, and Gavin, you know where I'm going with this, was night number 7 of the final super late model race. Cory Hall and Carson Brown get into it on the backstretch and into turn number 4. And I don't know. It was Gavin?
I mean, when you go back and watch it, it looks like a blatant right here in the fence. I mean, that's even what the race officials said. They team and
yeah.
On with it. In his interview, he's just, it's funny, Cory Hall seemed super apologetic.
Yeah.
It didn't seem like he intentionally wrecked him, and the way that some of the reactions were, I don't really know what to believe about it, but I don't know about Cory Hall. I don't know what his reputation is. I don't know enough about him. Was this a deal, or did he just have a moment where he decided to direct somebody?
Yeah. Well, and
another thing
go ahead.
Is that the camera angle didn't do him.
No, it did not.
I mean,
yeah. If Carson Brown did come up at all,
which I think he did.
Yeah. From watching it, I did.
I looked at that replay back like 6 times, and while I do think Cory Hall came down, he was coming down to enter the corner, but I also think that Carson Brown came up just enough, and because I base it off of the Lions down the backstretch, and while they may not be exactly perfect, obviously Brown is trying to get up as far towards the wall as he can to get the best entry, because that middle line off the bottom is a dominant lane at New Smyrna, and Cory Hall would have had that going into 3. I think it was a racing incident, but just how close it looked like a right hook.
Yeah. Another side to that story is, when cars come on you try to get as far away from them as you can. But you don't go so far. There's a wall there.
Yeah.
And it had a deal where he was trying to keep himself out of the wall, and Carson Brown kept coming up. So he did turn down, but he was turning down to keep himself off the wall. But that's just, I don't know the full story behind it. I don't know what he was thinking. He was trying to get away from the wall, or if he did it intentionally.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I looked back at it a lot and a good bit. I think it was a racing deal, but it definitely did not look good. But I think the thing that puts me over the edge on thinking about that was his interview. And Gavin, you mentioned it, like he seemed very genuine, and he talked about, Anthony Campy there, everyone knows the two top teams in super late model competition are Anthony Campy Racing and Downey Wilson Motorsports. And so I think Cory Hall, I just think he didn't mean to do it, Gavin.
I remember one thing that stuck out to me is it's almost the end of the race. Why would I tear up two race cars that are torn up? Like, why are you possibly going to tear a race car?
Yeah. It didn't look good, but, that was obviously the low light of his week. I mean, besides that, he got a super late model win in a feature race. He had some great finishes. He finished on the podium. Just not the way he wanted to bookend his weekend. But I think that really settles us off for the World Series of Asphalt. And that was our really, really big deal for asphalt racing, because there was so much there and so much that we watched.
And one more, just my final quick note on that is Patrick Emmerling in the Tour Mods won.
Dominated.
He dominated. He was definitely, if Gavin Michelle was the super late model champ, obviously, but man, if I had an overall most points earned, I don't know how it's not Patrick Emmerling.
Yeah.
I don't know how he didn't just absolutely blow everyone else out of the water. Nobody could really touch him in any race they were all in.
Yeah, he was dominant in his modified.
Impressive.
I mean, it goes to show why he's one of the top in the NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour. And I think, didn't he run an Xfinity car at Daytona?
I'm pretty sure he did.
He's ran some
races and some races. And I'm not sure, but I want to say he's maybe ran a cup race or two at a short track, but I'm not sure.
Well,
I know for a fact he ran several Xfinity races.
I know that Bonsignor ran obviously with Joe Gibbs this weekend, but they were running the Xfinity race and they said Patrick Emmerling, and I was like, wait, he's running an Xfinity car this weekend? But he dominated in the World Series of Asphalt. And unless either of you have anything else, I think that's going to move us on to our dirt segment.
Yeah, I mean, just right before we jump into the dirt segment, you go back to the icebreaker in Florence. One just really cool thing I want to point out, Keelan Harvick led the race flag to flag in the pro late model division, getting I'm pretty sure his first pro late model win, and just absolutely dominating the competition. I just want to point that out. The future's so bright for that kid.
Yeah, it really is. He did dominate. We weren't able to watch it. I know I tried to. It wasn't on Flow. It was on some weird site. James Pike got to do what was it? He was the color commentator on that race. But yeah, nice. Keelan Harvick dominated.
Now getting into the dirt world, and I feel like we haven't. When I go look at my notes, I feel like there wasn't near as much dirt racing as the World Series of Asphalt, but
there
really was. There's been a lot. Really, only from two tracks though, Ocala and Volusia. But man, you had so many divisions down in Ocala. It was pretty straightforward with the Lucas Oil late models. The one thing I do want to point out, Hudson O'Neal and Brandon Shepard, two guys that we're used to winning a lot of races every year, so far this year, they just have no momentum, and
Yeah.
I don't know what they need to do to find it. I don't know if it's just going to require, getting back kind of to the East Coast and the Midwest and just kind of a reset closer to their team's headquarters, or if they're just going to be off this year, which I have a really hard time believing the Rocket One team's going to be off, and SSI, I mean, as good of a team they are, I don't see them being off either. Jonathan Davenport got a win. Devin Moran won 3 nights of the 5 at Ocala, which was kind of the most impressive to me. Going down to Volusia in their super late models, awesome night 1. They pretty much raced in complete fog cover the whole night. Nick Hoffman got that win, and that was just super impressive. Ricky Thornton Jr. got 2 more, or 1 more win. Okay, you were saying?
Yeah, I mean, well, I got to watch the late models at Ocala with you. We got to watch a lot of those together. Obviously, you watched pretty much everything else, but it was so awesome to watch them, and I'm glad that we're getting to do. I'm glad that I'm getting more into late models. Because I've been racing a lot on iRacing, and I've actually really started to enjoy that. And I think I'm actually getting decent at it. Me and Timothy, before we all ran our league race, we're running the limited late model. I think we were at what is it, Lima Land or Lima Land, Timothy?
It's Lima Land.
I still am gonna say Lima Land, but I'm probably wrong. I know I'm wrong. So don't hate on me. Please don't hate on me. But yeah, we ran there. But I watched everything at Ocala, and you mentioned it's a weirdly shaped track, Gavin. It's almost like an egg.
Yeah, you think Darlington looks like an egg? No, it does not. Ocala is like the weird smaller child of Darlington and Richmond, but on dirt. I don't even know how to explain it. As weird as everybody talks about Florida being, Ocala is 100% Florida weird.
Yeah, I think it was weird looking.
You're in turn 1 until you're on the backstretch, and then turn 3 and turn 4 are so short. When you watch them go into turn 1, it's almost like turn 2 basically is the backstretch. Is the best way to describe it.
Yeah, it's a weird track, but I think it produced a lot of good racing, especially with the late models. And I think what is it? We had the world. What was it? Was World of Asphalt Outlaws? Was that last episode, or was that in this week? There's so much that happened.
The World of Outlaws, Sprint Cars and
Volusia.
And yeah, Sprint Cars opened their season at Volusia. Carson Macedo won the non-points race. Christopher Bell won the first night after Emerson Axum absolutely dominated. Yeah. And then spun out on his own in just the few final laps, leading the race. And then Kyle Larson wins night 3 and 4. So what's funny, Kyle Larson and Christopher Bell are currently 1 and 2 in the World of Outlaws point standings, and they're 2 NASCAR guys. So.
I was gonna say, like, they're not running the whole season, and
not even close to it.
Oh, and I couldn't remember if that was last episode now, because we had so much go on, but that's something I got to watch. We were talking about, and Timothy, I think you were talking about it as well, about how fast those sprint cars are at Volusia.
Oh yeah, it's ridiculous. I went there one year when we had the Legends Winter Nationals at Citrus County, and we went to Volusia. I think it was on our off night, and the sprint cars are just unbelievably fast there.
Yeah.
I don't know their top speed exactly, but it's too fast. In my opinion, it's too fast. When I was there, I saw the leader. He ran over the right rear of a lap car and got launched into the fence.
Oh my gosh!
And it took out the fence. There was a 2-hour delay because they had to rebuild the fence. It was interesting. But.
Well, and that's one of those things. Like, Gavin, you've got a lot more insight on that. Like, are there more tracks like Volusia that do that, or is Volusia really in its own world? When because that's crazy. Like, I remember I was watching, and I was like, obviously when we're watching racing, the camera angles and everything they do, the cars, they look fast. But when I was watching the sprint cars at Volusia, I was like, they are on like some other realm of speed.
Just wait till they go to Eldora and Knoxville.
Oh God!
I mean, Eldora and Knoxville have this sense of speed in a sprint car, to me, just watching that. I don't even know if it's rivaled Like, I think the only thing that rivals the sense of speed is watching maybe the Indy 500 or IndyCar at Texas is really the only things that feel that fast. I know there's a lot of cars out there that are actually moving faster, but relative to the track size, it's
Yeah, they're
insane.
not going that fast on a
No.
half-mile dirt oval.
Yeah, exactly. 130 on a half-mile dirt oval is
Gosh.
might as well be 250 on asphalt.
Yeah, and I would be willing to bet that they're going faster than 130, especially when the track has a lot of bite in it before it gets slicked off. They're just unbelievably fast. I mean, I think they're over 1,000 horsepower and they weigh like 900 pounds.
I think maybe
Uh,
more than that. Maybe
Do they weigh more than that? I'm not exactly sure.
1,300 with the motor and the driver. They're around 1,500 pounds.
15. Okay, yeah, that sounds better. I don't know where I got that
It's still
number from.
I think the midgets
But
are 900 pounds.
That might be what I'm
But
thinking
still,
of.
I
But
mean, it's ridiculous.
yeah. I mean, you're almost 1-to-1 on power to weight, and
Yeah.
you have a giant wing that gives you all the downforce in the world. I mean, that's a combination for unreal speed. So
Well, and they're able to do it. I mean, those drivers we saw. I was watching my boy Hunter Schurenberg, and he fared pretty well. Finished, I think it was top 15. I want to say he was battling up near the top 10. Couldn't quite stick in the top 10, but my boy was fighting well. But I just thought it was crazy. Like I've never truly gotten to watch the sprint cars before, and especially for an opening for me at Volusia was an eye opener.
Yeah, I mean, the sense of speed that they have at those half miles in a winged sprint car is just ridiculous. And now, if you want to have my weird, crazy, sick and twisted hot take, it is that sprint cars are at their best when they don't have a wing on. And USAC actually got to start their season at Volusia as well with some great racing. Kyle Cummins held off Jason Pursley to win their first race. Logan Seavey won night 2. And then I think after that, it didn't take them long before they went to Ocala, just like everybody else.
It was back and forth for literally both series this
and
weekend.
Ocala, just back and forth, everybody.
Well, I know. Well,
up and down the road.
I want to open that up a little bit more. Talk to me about that difference. Like, is that like obviously that's personal decision, but talk to me about the differences in that wing and without it, and why you think it's more natural without the wing.
Okay, to me, when I watch a non-winged race, there is a lot of off-throttle time. In a winged car, there is no off-throttle time. Even when you're in the corners on a bigger track, you're just tapping the brakes to get the car turned sideways without letting off the gas. And in the non-winged cars, unless you're at a huge track, you're never wide open. And it's a lot more of the throttle control. There's a lot less aero blocking, a lot less, dirty air isn't really a factor. And I think that's when racing is at its purest, when it is just a driver, a wheel, and pedals, and that's all that matters. And there's not near as many outside influences on the race.
And that I agree with. I love that.
I've had a similar thought. Like whenever I did watch the sprint cars at Volusia, it kind of just seems like the leader gets out front and just goes. There's not really.
Well, the only reason Axel lost was because he spun. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like the leader gets out front and goes, and then the rest of the pack is just stuck. Like there's not much going on, and that's an outside view of it. I don't watch it that much, so I don't know. There might have been a lot more passing and stuff going on, but also when they're going that fast, you kind of can't watch what's going on all the time because you have 30 cars that are going so fast that you can barely see them or keep up with them at least. So
yeah, no, and especially like you just said, it's follow the leader in a winged car. But to me, the half miles and the 3/8 miles are kind of built for a late model, and a quarter mile is what's built for a sprint car, because you get on those bull rings when there's not as much aero dependency and lap traffic comes into play within 10 laps at the start of the race. That's when you see some of the best sprint car races, is on the smallest tracks possible. And I think you see really Eldora is my favorite half mile as far as the racing it puts on, because yeah, there's still aero dependency, but it's such a multi-lane racetrack that you can get out of dirty air at the start of a race and really battle with the leader without having to rely on lap traffic.
Yeah. Well, and for me, like, my experience is obviously all with iRacing. I've never gotten to do anything for real, but, I think this, when we talk about this between, like, outside factors versus, like, purely driver, it makes me think about iRacing and, like, fixed setup races. Like, I only run fixed setup races, because I have no idea how to set up a car. I've been trying to learn it so desperately, but I just have not been able to quite grasp it. But so I run fixed setups, and I'm like, I love that the most, especially right now, just because it's like, all right, everyone has the same right now. Now it's all based off of driver, throttle control, all of it, no matter what.
And bringing back to iRacing, my last comparison I'm going to make before we can kind of move on from a wing to a non-wing is, think of a winged car for you, like a casual fan. Think of the current generation of a NASCAR Cup car.
Okay.
How the wheels are super wide. You're glued to the ground, but you're snappy. It's tight, but as soon as you cross that threshold of being loose, you're spinning around.
Yeah.
And then a non-wing sprint, think of more like the Gen 3 or the Gen 4 Cup car, where you're wrestling the car you're wrestling the car down the straightaways even.
I love that. I really do. Like, obviously, I talked to you both about, I'm been working on being a broadcaster, but I also do want to race, and my first and everything is asphalt. But I think I want to get into some dirt, because, Timothy, you talked about it. You did dirt one time, and I think you liked it.
Oh yeah, it was a blast. It was a lot of fun. Didn't have the result.
What'd you do? What'd you run?
Fast enough for.
Yeah.
I started. So I started outside pole for our heat race. I started to roll the top on the leader, but that was like the first time I had ever been in a race car without mirrors or somebody in my ear. So I gave up way too much and fell back to third, and I just got stuck there. So I started ninth for, I believe it was a 50-lap feature. And this isn't a street stock, so it wasn't a late model or anything. Started ninth, drove to third, and there was a bump that started to develop in the middle of 1 and 2, and no. I was like really fast, rolling in really high, and then driving like right across that bump off on the bottom, and that's where I was making all my passes. And then just one time going through there, I caught that bump weird, and it broke the right rear shock mount, and yeah, I was just holding on from then on. I still ended up 7th out of like 20 something cars, but it was a lot of fun, because you can move around, and like you start seeing, okay, it's the bottom's drying out getting into 1, so I'm gonna hang it out a little bit and see if I can get a drive off. And you get that drive off one time and you blow by a car on the inside, and it's like, okay, I can keep doing this. And then people start to figure that out. They start moving around, and it makes for great racing. It's not just follow the leader.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's one of the things that I've started to enjoy about dirt racing. Like, there's obviously a lot of things cross over, but there are also a lot of differences. And you can do both, but I just think I love that aspect of the track. Like, changes so much. I mean, we talk about asphalt tracks, short tracks, they build rubber. Obviously the track temperature is different. More rubber, sometimes you'll get slicker, but it doesn't change a ton, and not near as much as dirt.
Oh yeah, it's not even close. Sometimes you'll have the dew set weird on the track right in the middle of the race, and you have to adjust for that, or it'll be really hot and you have to adjust for that. But it's never really throughout the race. It might change a lot between, practice and the race, but, in the middle of the race, you're not going to be completely changing your driving style to fit the track. And that's something that's great about dirt.
Gavin, what else, do we got anything else on the dirt agenda?
I mean, just looking at the final results from that, Justin Grant, Dason Pursley, and Kyle Cummins were your winners from Ocala, as well as Brady Bacon. I forgot to point that one out. But those were your USAC
That's such a
winners.
cool name.
We talked about, Brady Bacon's an awesome name. It really is. But those were your USAC winners. We talked about your World of Outlaws winners. I think we talked about I mentioned the rain the race in the fog.
Yes, you did.
Okay, yeah, I mean, everything through that is pretty much everything that we had to talk about. And
Well, you know
I
what
think
that
now
moves us
time-
to?
Bonehead of the week.
Yes, I love this section.
I think this might be Scott's favorite part of the show.
I am very excited about this. Shout out to Drew King, one of our teammates at Hypershift. My bonehead of the week, and if you didn't catch in last episode, this is the I can't say the word, but it's a very not smart move of the past 2 weeks that we saw. And my pick is for Connor. Well, actually, mine was Cory Hall. Yours was the next person I'm saying. I'm reading them backwards. I see the two C's. Mine was Cory Hall because we just talked about the controversy earlier with whether he wrecked intentionally or not, and that's up for debate. But no matter what, it really stunk that it took away from his week because he was doing so well. And so I think obviously he was in that position, and again we've put it up for debate whether it was intentional or not. But everyone will think about that moment except for all the great things he did throughout the week.
Yeah, I mean, that was a bonehead move by him, whether intentional or not. And like you said, it sucks that that's what his week's going to be remembered for.
Yeah.
But I kind of changed mine last minute. I wrote about who I think you were going to mention first. But last minute, watching the Daytona 500 kind of gave me this one. I kind of feel bad because this is someone I've met a handful of times, someone I know. So I'm going to go ahead and say it.
You can call him out then.
I'm calling you out, Tab Boyd, spotter of the 47 car, former spotter for Joey Logano. I'm sorry, but you win this week's Bonehead of the Week. I mean, you cleared Stenhouse down, which is an aggressive move, but yeah, it's late in the Daytona 500.
Yeah.
Make every move possible. I'm agreeing 100%. But when 5 cars stack up behind you and you sit there and tell your driver, oh, nothing wrong, they just stayed in it.
Well,
you had 5 cars behind you all rolling out of the throttle enough that it stacked them up, and you're going to sit there and tell your driver, oh, we did nothing wrong.
Well, and we'll get to that in just a moment because me and Gavin definitely have a lot to say about that. We know. But our badass move of the week, mine was Max Reeves. I talked about it. He held off LeBay and Wright late in the Pro Late Model feature, and LeBay, a tenured stock car driver, and Timothy talked about it earlier, Hunter Wright, been around the block a lot in those cars. And so I think for Max Reeves at such a young age to hold them off, I mean, he raced so clean in all of his races. He just looked great.
No, I mean, Max Reeves, like you said, I think we mentioned earlier, he looked like he'd been racing for years, and he's just 15 years old, and I think that was his first ever Pro Late Model start. And I mean, the kid's awesome.
Yeah.
But I think mine is someone's early start in their career, but not somebody as young. I'm going to go with Brendan Queen winning the ARCA race and taking a trophy, which is a Chili's margarita mixer, taking that trophy into the Waffle House after the race.
What'd you say tonight, Gavin, after your basketball deal?
So I produced for a local high school, and I went and got Waffle House after the game, and I sent
What'd you text me?
Snapchat to the two of you. I said, Bean Nation versus the world, while I was at the Waffle House.
He texted me, he said we were talking about our recording tonight because I had a broadcast for a iRacing session, and so I did that, and Gavin, I was wondering when he was back, he was like, I'm currently at Waffle House trying to channel my inner Brendan Queen, and I died out laughing at that right there. I had to mute myself on the broadcast.
But
now
that's going to be my new challenge. Is I'm going to just text you while you're broadcasting.
Please
I'm
do.
going to try to get you to break character during a broadcast.
Dude.
That's my new challenge.
I broadcast 6 out of the 7 nights of the week, so you can do it pretty much every night that we aren't racing together. I'm broadcasting, so catch me doing that. You just mentioned it through our bonehead of the week. We'll move on to the Daytona 500, our last segment of the night, and let's go ahead and get to it. I mean, obviously, the biggest controversy of the weekend of the race was, that moment between Joey and Stenhouse. And obviously, let's go ahead and say it, viewers and listeners, Gavin and I are avid Joey Logano fans. Like, we are diehard Joey fans.
I'm very biased towards Joey.
Yeah.
I mean,
so am I. And
we've been to each other's houses, so it's kind of the point where me and him are friends. I'm not going to sit here and bash him, but I'm close enough to say, like, if he does something wrong, I'm not going to be afraid to get on here and say it either. But no,
I would be afraid to say it. Because I don't know Joey, but hey, I actually did meet him once. It was the second ever Talladega race I've gone to. Why did I do two like this? You can't see my camera. I did a two like the Spider-Man symbol. But I actually met him. Well, met him is air quotes. He signed my hat at the 2019 Talladega race in the fall. But yeah, I mean, we talked about that moment. Timothy, did you see this moment?
No, I don't watch NASCAR.
I know you don't watch NASCAR. I know. I've been knowing that.
Yeah, the only part from the Daytona 500 that I actually saw was the Preece wreck.
Yep.
Yeah, that's all I saw.
Well, we'll get to that in just a second because that is definitely a topic of conversation because he went up and over and around. But, I mean, obviously me and Gavin are a little biased, and we're not going to lie to y'all on that for sure. But I think when you really take it into a perspective, yes, Joey made an aggressive move. He's an aggressive driver. Maybe he could have laid off. It was 15 laps to go. But he went for the move. Stenhouse threw a big block. Joey lifted. And that's one of the things a lot of drivers rules, not just Joey, but as a lot of people will say, you get one lift and you get one block. Mm-hmm. And after that, whatever happens is on you. And Joey lifted big time. That started to stack up his line because he was in the middle. And so then Joey said in his interview that Stenhouse was very indecisive. He didn't know if he wanted to go back up to that top lane or if he was going to come down to the middle. That's where Joey tried to squeeze into that hole. And then Stenhouse comes back, tries to block. By that point, Joey's right front is in his left rear quarter panel. Like, he is there. And when he decides to try to back out, well, the field is stacked up from the checkup from the block that Stenhouse put. So when he lifts in the in-car camera that you can listen to, he can't go any far backwards because the field is coming.
No, I mean, you should see Noah Gragson behind him. Their bumpers, Gragson and Logano's bumpers are locked. I'm not 100% sure who was behind Gragson, but I mean, their bumpers were locked, and it was just an accordion effect, and Stenhouse just kept coming across the track, and when he did that, it managed to take out Blaney, took out Joey, took out Gilliland, took out Gragson, took out so many more cars.
Took out Kyle Busch, who made an aggressive statement, who I don't blame him. Look, he's tried 20 times to win the 500. He's a two-time champion. He's a successful driver. Everyone wants the 500 as a crown jewel. He definitely made a bit of an aggressive statement. I know Kyle Busch is no Joey Logano fan by any means.
No, not at all.
But I think when you objectively really take a moment to look at it, I mean, let's be honest, and you and me know it very well, Gavin. There are a lot of Joey Logano haters out there, and I saw a lot of people, a lot of pages that were posting about this incident. A lot of people were defending Joey.
Yeah, I mean, when you have a reputation at Daytona and Talladega like Joey and Stenhouse both do, if we're going to be completely honest, I mean, a wreck like that is going to happen when the two of them are together. Like, when it was getting that close to the end of the race, I knew a big one was coming. I feel like
everybody knew.
Everybody knew the big one was about to happen. And I don't think you can be really that mad at anybody, even that mad at Stenhouse, for that matter. I mean, Stenhouse got out of the car and said, yeah, it was a racing deal. Joey's like, yeah, he came across me, but I mean, it's the end of the Daytona 500. I'm not going to... I feel like Joey probably would have made not the same move,
I was going to say,
move.
Well, and
I mean, it's hard to sit here and say, give up your position with 15 laps to go in the Daytona 500.
My only thing is...
that's...
My only thing is that, I mean, the outside line was still there. like, he wouldn't have lost that much. But I, again, agree with you when saying you've got to be aggressive. It's just one of those things where I'm upset because you and me as fans know it. Joey puts himself in positions at super speedway races. He has figured it out over the years. He is good at it. But since about 2019 or so, he puts himself in position and something happens. I will say like 85% of the time it has been out of his control. There's been that 15% where he's made the move and someone gets turned. But most of the time it's usually not on him. And as a fan, it's very frustrating because I think he should have another 500 by now.
Yeah, I mean, you can sit here and say that. I mean, you go back and you look at the incident with McDowell and Keselowski. I believe that was 2019. And I mean, that was a wreck that you go back and watch, and I feel like that wreck could have been avoidable. But at the same time, McDowell wouldn't have won the 500 if he wouldn't have made that move.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, every move to win a cup race, you got to make. And if it doesn't work out,
then
it's a lot easier to look back on saying, well, that was stupid, than to be the guy that didn't make the move and said,
never knowing if it would work.
Cup race and I didn't get to. So that's my thing is you have to make aggressive moves, especially at Daytona and Talladega.
Yeah, it's very similar to like our league race the other night. You know, Chris and I were in the, deep in the top 10. We had a shot to make a third lane through the middle. We went for it, and that would have been the race-winning move if there wasn't a bad block thrown on us. Yeah, but it's stuff like that. If we wouldn't have went for that, we would have sat there and finished. I think we were running 6th and 7th. Yeah, we'd have sat right there and finished there.
Yeah. Well,
what happened to me?
Well, what happened to Gavin? Gavin pretty much got killed. But I don't want to go super speedway racing in our league for a while because I have had a rough going. I've had a rough going.
Scott's always in the middle of the dumbest wreck you've
ever
seen.
It's the worst.
Have you guys heard of what my punishment is for coming back up the track?
What is it?
So I'm on a 3-race probation, and I am not allowed to qualify during those 3 races. I have to start in the back.
Oh, no.
Oh, my gosh. And those will not be super speedway races for us.
Yeah.
But, hey, that's one thing that we'll probably keep updating the podcast about because, I mean, the 3 of us and 3 other guys run Hypershift Racing, a racing league, and we absolutely love it. It's been a ton of fun. But
it's been a blast.
It's been fun, and we've been excited about it. It's a time we all look forward to each week and getting together because I would say we talked about it on our night of racing that Gavin, Timothy, and some of the other guys we drive with are some of my closest friends, and that there's not a lot of people that I'm around that understand racing, and it's one of the places where these guys for me understand what I'm talking about and agree with me and like it.
It's definitely been fun, and I'm excited for the rest of the year. I mean, I wish we were running more short tracks.
Dude, I know. I was looking at the schedule again today, and I'm missing our one road course race.
Oh,
I know. I'm going to be at my girlfriend's birthday party.
It's the worst road course they could have chosen, too. I don't know why we're running Daytona road course.
If it had been Sonoma, I'd have been even more mad.
Oh, yeah, Sonoma would have been fun. Even Watkins Glen. I feel like you can't
I didn't do well there the last time we went.
Yeah, but you can't have a Cup Series schedule.
I know. I was really surprised by that.
And not run Watkins Glen.
In my opinion, this is my last hot take, is Watkins Glen might be just as an iconic of a track in NASCAR as maybe not Daytona or Charlotte, but I mean it's up there with Bristol and Darlington.
It's up. I would agree with that. No, that's not a hot take.
I think it was one of the 5 or 6 most iconic tracks in NASCAR.
By the way, Gavin will never run out of hot takes. That is something that will never happen. But speaking of, we're talking about speedway racing still with the 500. We mentioned, Preece. And I thought this was hilarious today. Everyone knows that if you're listening, he went up and over again for the second time at Daytona. But I thought this was hilarious, and I know that you saw this, Gavin. If you didn't, I would be floored. That Preece changed his profile picture today.
Yes, is him as an astronaut, and I think that might be the funniest profile picture in NASCAR right now.
Dude.
Definitely one of my favorite Twitter and Instagram interactions a NASCAR drivers had.
Yeah, I mean
in
he's
the last long time.
yeah he's starting to rival Ryan Newman at going up and over
Seriously.
at Daytona.
No, that was my
It's
first thought was, well, Ryan Newman's back.
yeah, well, and it's kind of funny because they're both modified guys.
It's
And they're
yeah.
both racing for
They both run really good. I mean, Preece hasn't won like Ryan Newman did, but
Well, and I think this year he was very good in that RFK car. I think he's going to have a possibility this year. I mean, I remember when Preece came into the Cup Series, I think it was with JTD Doherty Racing in that 37, and I don't know why, but I liked him. Maybe it was because of his name. I think me and my dad joked about it, but I think now that he's in that RFK equipment, I think he's going to have some possibilities to get a win.
oh yeah, and he's a great driver. He's not just there because his parents had big pockets.
Yeah.
He's come to the Snowball Derby and run in the top 5.
Yep.
I don't think he finished there, but he raced
Nope.
in the top 5 for most of the race, and that alone is incredible. If you even make the field for the Snowball Derby, I mean you're among the best 50 drivers in the nation. So it's not easy at all.
Yeah.
No, and he's such an old school personality too, in my opinion.
I love it. And
he's just so. I think he's definitely the grittiest driver in the field.
Yeah. Well, and one thing I want to talk about on his incident, he was talking about his interview that, at some point someone's really going to get injured. And I really was thinking about that, and I just don't know what NASCAR can do.
Well, I have a thought about
Okay,
it, and
I
I
wanna hear
think
it.
it has a lot to do with the diffuser in the back. I mean,
that's what Preece mentioned.
A diffuser takes compressed air and basically expands it. So when you turn that around backwards, you're compressing a bunch of air right underneath the rear end of the car,
Okay.
and it's just like the COT cars. You basically add lift to the rear end of a race car, and when they turn around backwards, then they're gonna go up in the air. So I know that they have like precautions for that, like the flaps or whatever that keep the air from getting under the car, but those fail, especially when the rear tires are already up off the ground. So
Yeah. Well, and one thing for me was like, it was a very odd set of circumstances, and I think there are millions, billions, trillions, quintillions infinity of scenarios that can happen when it comes to anything, and especially when we talk about racing. Like we saw Christopher Bell on the outside hit Preece, and then Preece jutted to the left, hits Eric Jones, and then the car lifts up like a wheelie. And while it was doing that, it was just flying like this. And for viewers, I'm doing my hand weirdly at an angle for listeners. But once it got to the side, that's when it lifted and blew over. And that's one of the things that I think you can do. I think I agree with you about the diffuser, but I just don't. You cannot account for every situation.
yeah, and especially like you can try and add precautions for stuff like that, but it's not.
This is the business.
It's gonna fail. Yeah, it's gonna fail sometimes, and it's just like the roof flaps. The roof flaps. They've worked really well. It's hard for them to fail the way that they work, but when I don't know how to explain it, but that seems like a part to me that would fail, a flap that covers the diffuser. But maybe the answer to it would be just take the diffusers off for super speedways. I mean, that wouldn't be that hard. I get why they have diffusers, but take them off for the super speedways.
Yeah. Well, and it's time they can try it. I mean, we've seen they're finally testing tire models, all this other stuff. What I'm worried about is NASCAR is going to be like, Horsepower. Let's take it down again.
Yeah, that would. See, and this is one of my hot takes. I'm pulling my inner Gavin out, but I think that they should go to a smaller tire
Yes.
and bring back the 1,000 horsepower, because a smaller tire would slow them down. Maybe not run 1,000 horsepower at this super speedways for obvious reasons.
They need restrictors for sure.
And maybe restrict them at like Michigan or something. But let's not run 550 horsepower. I mean, super late models have more than that.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, that's something that I've talked about for years as well, just with this new car, and it's something that's ongoing. I'm just worried they're going to hear Preece and be like, "Oh, let's take the easy out."
Yeah, and it's really not the easy out.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, they're still going to run over 180 miles per hour at Daytona in a draft. So stuff like that's still going to happen.
Yeah.
And then you're just going to hurt your quality of racing at
everywhere else.
The mile and a halves and the short tracks. It's just taking horsepower away is not the answer.
Yeah. Gavin?
I'm just in 100% agreement. I think taking away horsepower it's never good.
Well, final thoughts here as we wrap up the episode. Obviously, William Byron goes back-to-back, puts himself in that number 24 in the right position.
And what did Jimmy Johnson do after we said he wouldn't make the Daytona 500?
Oh, my gosh. I forgot about that's literally the other day when I was like thinking about it, I was like, all right, there was some driver that Gavin said something about, and now, bro. All right.
Jimmy.
Dude, Gavin is taking away all credibility from himself.
I really am.
Timothy, I don't think you knew, but Gavin, what'd you say last episode?
We said that Jimmy Johnson probably wasn't going to make the Daytona 500 just based on the other cars that had an opportunity to make it, and then he goes out and finishes third place in the Daytona 500. I mean, I don't know what else to say to that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna need you to start doubting me and talking bad about
Dude,
me.
Seriously. Timothy gets enough problems already. I've said it before. I'll say it again. Timothy is one of those drivers that is so good and deserves more opportunity. And I'm excited to see it when he gets more opportunity. But yeah, I mean, Byron puts himself in the right position, goes out and goes back-to-back. Fifth driver ever to go back-to-back. The last person to do it was Denny Hamlin. And so, yeah, I thought it was a good race, especially after the rain. I mean, 5 hours of rain delay, basically. But again, obviously I was a little biased and upset that Joey wasn't there at the end. But I thought overall it was pretty good.
And I do think the end was a little bit anticlimactic.
For sure.
The huge wreck, the race back to the I'm glad they let him race back to the line, but just when you have a 30-car freight train narrowed down to 4 cars at the end of it, it just felt... To me, it almost felt like just another race. It felt a little bit short of what the Daytona 500 usually
I do agree
means
with that.
to the sport, and I don't know what NASCAR needs to do to fix that, or if that's even a NASCAR problem. But I
think it's just the way the race played out.
Just the way the race played out, and when you have such a lottery style of a race, making it feel big is just gonna be really hard to do.
Yeah.
Even when it is an upset, even when it is a popular winner like William Byron, who's a great driver and winning a back-to-back, it just the storylines that were built the entire race didn't pay off in the end, and it just didn't feel like it was bigger than the sport.
Yeah, and I
don't know if that's me being an older fan, or not older fan, but older than I was when I started watching NASCAR, when everything was, oh my God, it's the Daytona 500, it's the Daytona 500, and now I watched, 6, 7, 8 different racing series.
I think that's a nostalgia thing.
Daytona 500, but it just didn't feel that big this year.
Yeah. Well, and that's something I definitely agree with. I think that goes as we get older. It's kind of a nostalgia thing, but yeah, I thought it was a pretty decent race, but I thought we've definitely had better 500s before. But I think that's all we've got here for this episode. I think we're going to have I know we're going to have Cars Tour stuff for the next episode. They're opening at New River All-American, and I'm really excited about the Cars Tour picking up. Let's see, what else do we got? What else do we got, Gavin?
The dirt world's a little bit calm for the next few weeks.
Really?
I don't think High Limit starts till the middle of March. World of Outlaws has, I think, this weekend off, and then they're back. And I think everybody's kind of going from what they were doing down in Florida and getting ready to get into the meat of their season. So I think this coming weekend in Atlanta is the main thing this week. But I'm sure we'll have a little bit of stuff going on, but I don't think it's going to be near as busy as this week, which I don't think anything's going to be able to top the last.
Seriously,
how busy it is. So,
and we're gonna have another driver interview, and we'll have an in-depth interview. I don't know who we're gonna get yet, but we will keep you updated on Twitter, Instagram, all the socials. Go follow all of our handles. It's the B Main. There's an underscore in there somewhere, but I imagine if you type in the B Main that you will find it. I think it's the underscore B Main. And you will go in and be able to find all lowercase. That's on Twitter, Instagram. Where else?
It's just Twitter and Instagram right now.
Twitter and Instagram are our big ones.
And YouTube.
Join our Discord. I don't know how to do that. We'll post that somewhere. That's where you'll get a lot of our updates. Follow the YouTube channel, also the same handle, the underscore B Main, because that's where, actually, if you're watching, if you're listening to this, you're listening on Spotify. If you're watching this, you've already found the YouTube. And so either platform, go find our Spotify, go find our YouTube, all of the jazz. If you want to reach out to us about possible sponsorship, our email is thebmainpodcast2024@gmail.com. That is all lowercase, no spaces. We would love to be sponsored. I would love to get some money so that we can upgrade some of our stuff. I would love to have an actual producer. We had DJ last weekend, and he did that gig for free, and so I've been producing this one. As you can see, it's been a steady screen the whole time, but he is really good at what he does. So maybe if we get some sponsorship, we can get a legit producer. But I think that's going to do it all for us here in this episode number 3. Glad to have Timothy with us. He'll be back on regularly as he can, and obviously with my co-host Gavin. That'll be all for us, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
See you in 2 weeks.